This is my wife's GT Laguna Pro hardtail mountain bike that we picked up brand new from Dick's for about $400. And it's about time for this thing to get some proper love in the form of upgrades. And I'm super stoked to announce a new series where I'll be transforming and upgrading this bike into something that is more modern. Drop a comment down below and let me know what you think should be the first upgrade. We will be running the bike just about stock and putting down a baseline for times. Since I purchased this bike new in 2018, the only changes to the bike thus far have been some new grips, tires, and an absolutely awful suspension dropper post. Let's do a quick rundown of the current specs of the bike. Up front, we have an 80mm coil fork, a long stem, and some super narrow bars. There's an 3x8 drivetrain and some mechanical disc brakes. The bike in its current form weighs in at 33 pounds. Let's hit the test loop and take a look at the times.
Oh boy, I do not have high hopes for this thing.
Right from the get-go, I can tell you just how bad and outdated this 3x drivetrain is on the initial climb.
Oh god, shifting's terrible. Oh god.
If it was under any load at all, the drivetrain had some serious problems trying to change gears. On the first initial climb, I set a time of 4 minutes and 7 seconds. On the second steeper climb, I set a time of 6 minutes and 45 seconds.
Two-finger braking. Oh boy, this bike wants to send me OTV already.
So now that I'm on the first descent, I can tell you the rear brake on this bike is just not working properly, and I felt a bit timid picking up any more speed than I did.
I feel like the front brakes work way better than the rear. Okay. Maintain speed. Oh boy, so much easier on my bike. It's gonna be a miracle if I don't drop the chain. I get the same lines as I normally would on my bike. Just way slower. Pulling this rear brake as hard as I can, and I'm not stopping.
On the steeper rocky descent, I put in a time of 2 minutes and 16 seconds. Finally, on the last flow section, we are looking at a time of 1 minute and 40 seconds. I had a tough time deciding what I wanted to upgrade first, and I also asked you all what you thought I should do. So I knew that I wanted to upgrade one of two things first, and it basically came down to what I had already ordered. So I introduced to you the Bucklos Lutu Air Suspension Fork. I bought this off Amazon for $136. As much as I would love to have put on a used Fox 32 or a 34 on this bike, it just wasn't in the budget. And after seeing it on both Burn Peak's Flip Bike series and also Evan's MTB saga, I thought it was going to be the best bang for the buck. The only feature that was mandatory for a new fork was that it was an air fork rather than the insanely heavy cheap coil forks. I mean, seriously, look how heavy this fork is. It comes in at about 5.5 pounds. That's ridiculous. This new Amazon special comes in at about 3.5 pounds. That's a full 2 pounds lighter. The old coil fork was an 80mm travel fork, but after watching some of the old footage, I don't even think it was getting that much. This new fork has 120mm of travel, and let's get this thing installed. I think it's time for a montage. Honestly, I have my reservations about recommending forks like this, but I think for someone that's not doing anything crazy, this fork is probably going to be fine. I have links down below to both the fork and the tools I used to install it. One of the biggest hesitations about these forks is having seen a couple teardown videos. There is no actual oil bath in the forks. It's just grease. Drop a comment down below and let me know what you think should be the next upgrade. Not only will the extra travel be a great benefit, but this also should liven up the bike a bit. Since I upforked this bike by 40 millimeters, the geometry is going to change as a result. The new head tube angle is 67 degrees, and this is really gonna help the downhill capability significantly. The seat tube angle also slacked out a bit and is now at 71. Sweet, I think this makes the bike look so much better. Now, let's head out to the test loop and put in some times. Right away, I could tell the difference of the weight. Losing that 2 pounds was very noticeable. With the reduction of the weight, the climb felt easier and overall, the bike felt a bit more responsive. There is some bob in the suspension as I climb out of the saddle. However, I did have the compression knob fully open. On the first climb, I put in a time of 3 minutes and 48 seconds, which is 21 seconds faster than our baseline time. On the second steeper climb, I put in a time of 6 minutes 58 seconds. This is actually slower than my base time, but I'm gonna chalk this up to not putting in as much effort on the climb. This is where the new fork is really gonna shine, and that is the downhill. Immediately, I felt more confidence inspiring. Have a look at this quick side-by-side shot. You can see I'm charging through these sections more like I would on my trail bike. Doesn't that space-inspired jersey look rad? Hit the link in the description and head over to HandUp and use the discount code to pick up one for yourself. Doing so will help out the channel. I went with the suggested air pressure that's on the side of the fork, and I would recommend running a bit more air as I felt like it was packing quite a lot. Basically, it was staying deep in its travel is what I mean by packing. I was running around in the middle terms of rebound settings, and increasing it could have probably helped prevented some of the packing issue. But I need to play with the compression dial a bit more to see if I can get some more support out of it. So I was actually able to take some of my normal lines, albeit not as fast, but overall that should help out the time. If you look closely at the forks, you can see what I mean about them staying deep in the travel and really packing up. On the first downhill, I put in a time of 1 minute and 57 seconds. That is 19 seconds faster than our baseline time. Here on the fast flow segment, I honestly don't expect much change, but I did put in a time of 1 minute and 30 seconds, which is going to be a full 10 seconds faster than the baseline time. One of my biggest complaints thus far is that the fork stays deep in its travel and doesn't provide very good support. This could be overcome with some additional tweakings to the suspension settings, where it's the air pressure, the rebound, or even the compression dial. The biggest improvement, however, was on the downhill. The bike felt significantly better descending, and the improved times show it. These times are still far off from my actual trail bike, but they're getting closer. Quite honestly, there are 2 upgrades for your mountain bike that will undoubtedly have you riding with way more confidence. And in this episode, we ditched the Tektro mechanical disc brakes for a pair of used Shimano hydraulic brakes. Let's get these new brakes installed and let's hit the test loop. So I picked up a pair of Shimano MT500 hydraulic brakes, and get this, for $40. So the Shimano MT500 brakes are a massive upgrade over the stock mechanical brakes. And really though, on the used market, you should be able to pick up a pair for under $100. And I really think that besides a new fork, hydraulic brakes are one of the best upgrades for any entry-level bike. Installing the new brakes can be easy if everything is routed externally like this bike. Let's get the bike in the stand and get to work. First off, let's remove the grips, dropper lever, and then the brake levers from the handlebars. And then we're gonna repeat the process for the other side. For the front brake, we are going to need to loosen up the hose clamp and then remove the caliper from the fork lowers. And before we can remove the rear brake, I need to remove the zip ties that route the cables to the rear. And with that done, we can remove the caliper from the rear mount. With the old brakes uninstalled, we can finally put on these used Shimano hydraulic brakes. Hey, drop a comment down below and let me know what you think should be the next upgrade. Don't make the same mistake that I did. Be mindful of where the cable should be on the frame. I had to remove the caliper and reinstall after moving the hose to the inside of the frame. And speaking of the hose, hopefully I won't have to cut down the hose, but you know, we'll see. Time to redo all the zip ties that route the cables. Here's a pro tip, pick colored zip ties to help accent the bike. Hey, real quick, as I install these brakes, if you're enjoying this video, hit that like button and you'd be amazed how much it actually helps the channel grow. Subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode of the upgrade series. I will have to redo all of this work for future episodes where I replaced all the contact points on this bike. Get subscribed so you don't miss that video. I actually think replacing all the contact points is gonna make a bigger difference than some people might think. Unfortunately, the hose is too long, so we're gonna have to trim a bit off. Thankfully, I have all the pieces needed to make it happen. Since I cut the line, I'll have to do a quick bleed on the system to get out any air. With these new brakes installed, let's hit the test loop and see how the new brakes do. Seeing as the new brakes aren't gonna make me climb any faster, I'm gonna move straight to the downhill times. And in all honesty, I have come to the realization that with the current dropper post installed on the bike, it's severely inhibiting my ability to put down a consistent effort on the climbs. And you might be wondering why it's affecting me, and it comes down to this. With this being a suspension seat post, the post is not staying in an optimal position for climbing. Sometimes it drops so low, I feel like I'm pedaling a dirt jumper or a BMX bike.
All right, new brakes coming down.
With the addition of the hydraulic brakes, immediately I noticed that the brakes were significantly more powerful. But more importantly, they were way more consistent. I could pull the lever and know exactly how much power the brakes were gonna apply. And because of this, I was able to brake much later than the mechanical brakes. All that shows because I put in a time of 1 minute and 48 seconds, which is 11 seconds faster than the previous best time. And it's 28 seconds faster than the base time. You know, I'm not expecting a huge time difference on this fast flow section of trail, but with the new brakes, I put in a time of 1 minute and 26 seconds. My previous best time was 1 minute and 30 seconds, and our base time was 1 minute and 40 seconds. So this was a good 4 seconds faster than the previous best and a whopping 14 seconds better than them stock. Who would have thought that brakes that slow you down could make you faster? Contact points can be a super important upgrade. They may not necessarily make you faster, but what they will do is help you maximize your fun. Today, we are putting $500 worth of new contact points on this bike. A huge thank you to the channel supporter Tag Metals for providing bars, pedals, and grips for today's build. For the stem, I went with a race-based Chester stem in 40mm length. I really wanted to go for a shorter stem for this bike, as the stock 90mm stem felt quite sketchy on some parts of the rougher terrain. The long stem paired with a really narrow 650mm wide bars really hampered my ability to feel comfortable on this bike. For bars, we have the Tag Metals aluminum T1 handlebars. They feature a rise of 30mm and have a 35mm diameter. They originally came in 800mm width, but I cut them down in my how to cut down handlebars video, which you can check out right here. After cutting these down, they're now 760mm wide. They have a 5-degree upsweep and a 7-degree back sweep. For those curious, they do weigh in at 348 grams. These retail for $85, but you can use my discount code down in the description below to save 15%. Tag Metals supplied me with some T1 Brop grips in blue, which feature a moto style grip. I've used these before and they're quite awesome. These are gonna set you back $25 if you decide to pick up a pair. These are also quite a bit wider than most grips at 135mm. They have a diameter of 29 to 31mm depending on the part of the grip. And what that is going to do is, for me personally, having a larger grip reduces my hand fatigue. Because this bike had a 27.2 diameter seat post, it didn't leave me with a lot of options for a dropper post originally, and that is one of the reasons I went with this terrible dropper post initially. But now, thanks to the gravel bike scene, 27.2 droppers are a bit more common. I decided to go with the P&W Components 110mm pine dropper post. I picked up a WTB Volt saddle that I got for $43 on Amazon. The saddle is more on the budget side as it has steel rails. It's going to weigh more, but honestly, I'm not really worried about it with the price tag comparison versus the chromoly, titanium, or even the carbon version of the saddle. Since this bike does not have internal routing, I actually had to go with an externally routed dropper post. The Puget dropper lever is a nice addition, however, it'll be even better when we actually put it in its proper place. At first glance, this saddle looks like it's going to be quite comfortable. I'm really excited to get this on the trail and give it a try. So I have this P&W Puget lever here, but because we're still running a triple up front, I can't put it on the side. So what I am going to do is I'm actually going to put it on the right side, but actually flip it up towards like this. And that way I can still get to it fairly easily. These T3 nylon pedals just look awesome. They also look like they're gonna provide a ton of grip thanks to the 10 replaceable pins that are on each side of the pedal. I got these in the black color, but they also have 4 other colors to choose from. I wanted to go with blue, but unfortunately they were out of stock. I like the idea of nylon pedals as they are typically less expensive and weigh less than their metal counterparts. These cost $55 and weigh in at 361 grams. Now that the new parts are on, let's head out to the test loop and put in some times. On the first climb, the new dropper post and the contact points made a massive difference, and I was able to put in a time of 3 minutes and 38 seconds. That's 19 seconds faster than our base time, and now 10 seconds faster than our previous best. The second steeper climb still shows that maybe I went a little too hard on the baseline time. I put in a time of 6 minutes and 56 seconds, which is 1 second faster than our previous attempt. However, we are still slower than the baseline time at 6 minutes and 45 seconds, which I must have been feeling really good on that day when I set that baseline time. Now to the first downhill section. My baseline time is 2 minutes and 16 seconds. However, my previous best is 1 minute and 48 seconds. The result is in. I put in a time of 1 minute and 39 seconds. That's 37 seconds faster than the base time and 9 seconds faster than the previous best time. Now onto the fast flow section. The baseline time for this section is 1 minute and 40 seconds, and the previous best is at 1 minute and 26 seconds. With the new contact points, I put in a fast time of 1 minute and 20 seconds. That's 20 seconds faster than the base time and 6 seconds faster than the previous best. Right away, I immediately noticed the bike felt incredibly more solid and even familiar. I was originally concerned that by going to a shorter stem, the reach of the bike was going to feel even smaller. However, that actually wasn't the case. I think because of going with a full 100mm wider on the bars, the cockpit actually opened up significantly and put me in a more natural position that I am accustomed to. The steering felt way better as well, and it was no longer twitchy and overly responsive. The Tag Metal T3 nylon pedals were a major upgrade over the stock pedals. My feet were glued to the pedals in the rough, chunky sections of trail, and I no longer had to be concerned that my feet might just suddenly fly off. A lot of this comes down to the fact that the original pedals had dull plastic pins, while the T3 pedals had replaceable metal pins. One downside of the metal pins is that if you manage to catch your leg on the pedal, there's gonna be blood. The T1 prop grips felt a bit more comfortable thanks to the larger diameter of the grips. The soft ridges on the grip also really helped with my hand fatigue. They definitely felt grippy and made sure my hands stayed where they needed to. Absolutely, the biggest improvement to this bike has got to be getting rid of that suspension dropper post. Having a saddle stay in the spot where you want it makes a major difference in the overall quality of a riding experience. The P&W Components Pine dropper post worked flawlessly. The WTB Volt saddle was incredibly comfortable, and I was quite surprised. I've actually had this saddle in the past and it never really felt this good. The bad news is that the wife doesn't actually agree with me on how comfortable the saddle is. The good news, however, is the fact that I can steal it and go put it on one of my bikes after this series is done. It's quite incredible how far this bike has come. Our total cost for the upgrades in today's video were not cheap. It's finally time to replace this outdated 3x drivetrain on this bike. The 3x8 drivetrain that was on this bike was seriously heavy, and I'm actually really curious to see how much weight we can actually shave off. I've gone with a more budget-friendly approach for today's upgrades. I went with the Box 3 Prime 9 drivetrain. I have never used them before, but I'm really hope that they live up to my expectations. This is Box's budget drivetrain offering, and it cost me $211.11. But that included almost everything I needed to change out this drivetrain. It came with a cassette, a derailleur, a shifter, and a chain. The only thing that was missing was a crankset. So for that, I went with an Amazon special. I went with the Gnopper crankset for $39. The crankset will work with my existing bottom bracket, so I won't actually need to change that out. Before we can remove this crankset and derailleur, we need to remove the chain. And now that the chain is out of the way, we can take off this 8-speed derailleur. Next up, it's time to remove this 3x crankset. Holy cow, this crankset is seriously heavy. After I got my new pedals off, I weighed them in and they came in at 990 grams. That makes me wonder how much this new crankset's gonna weigh. Wow, these come in at 597 grams. That's almost a full pound difference between the two. I really wonder how much more weight we can save on this bike. Speaking of saving weight, we can actually get rid of this front derailleur and bring this bike into the modern world of drivetrains. Well, kinda. Now we need to remove the grips and the brakes again so I can install the new shifter. Time to take off this old cassette and put on the new one. I just realized that I don't have the right tool to get this cassette off. Looks like I'll have to order the part online and hope that it comes in a couple days. Don't you just hate when that happens? Well, I guess while I wait for that part to come in, I can put the pedals on the new cranks and I can put the dropper lever back in its rightful place. Good news! Thanks to the old Amazon Prime, I got the tool I needed to replace the cassette. While we're here, we can remove this dork disc because we really don't need this. Awesome! Now that the new drivetrain is installed, let's check out how much weight we lost by switching this to a 1x9 drivetrain. All that parts come to a total of 2,380, and the new parts are 432 grams less. Wow, I thought it would have been more, but some of the new parts are heavier and with better features and better durability. So when we first started, the bike weighed in at 33 pounds, and now, thanks to all the upgrades, this bike now weighs in at 29.2 pounds. That's almost a 4-pound difference on this bike, and you can really tell. Now, let's stop being a bunch of weight weenies, and let's go hit the test loop and see if it made a difference. On the first climb, the new drivetrain felt great. The shifting felt surprisingly crisp and snappy for such a budget drivetrain. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the first downhill, but more on that in just a minute. On the first climb, I put in a time of 3 minutes and 43 seconds, which is slower than our previous best, but we are still 24 seconds faster than the stock time. On the second steeper climb, I initially felt terrible on the fitness side, and it really showed. I put in a time of 7 minutes and 37 seconds, which is quite a lot slower than my previous times. So I think we're just gonna call that one a wash. Now, onto the downhill. I actually encountered a mechanical on my first run as the drivetrain and the chain went a bit haywire. I actually had to stop halfway through and fix it, so I guess I'll head back up to the top for another try. On the downhill, I put in a time of 1 minute and 40 seconds, which is 1 second slower than the previous best, but still 36 seconds faster than our previous stock time. Unfortunately, on the fast flow section, I ran into some unexpected hikers and I had to slow down quite a bit. I put in a time of 1 minute and 28 seconds, which even with the hikers, still put me 12 seconds faster than the stock time. And if I had to guess, I lost a good 10 seconds there. So let's put that at an unofficial time of 1:18. Overall, the new drivetrain felt great and I only ran into that weird shifting issue a couple times. I'm gonna chalk it up to it being a brand new drivetrain on its maiden voyage. As I put in some more miles on it, I'll chalk up my thoughts and do a separate review. Subscribe so you don't miss that. The new Box 9 drivetrain was still a major upgrade for this bike. Absolutely, this is probably the biggest upgrade we've done to this bike. I introduced to you the Hunt Wheels Mason X Hunt 650B Adventure wheel set. I picked up these rims for $479 less a 10% discount. These rims have a 25mm internal width, which is actually quite a bit bigger than the 19 or 20 internal width of the stock wheel set. This is going to allow me to run a much bigger tire size. The wheel set is incredibly lighter at a claimed weight of 1,594 grams, and this is going to be a substantial difference in weight savings versus the stock wheel set. Not only is this bike getting a new wheel set, but it's also getting new Kenda tires and a pair of Tannis armor inserts. I have some Kenda Booster Pros in 2.4 width that we can put on the new wheels. These are for my trail bike and hopefully they'll provide a better ride. The Tannis armor inserts are a weight penalty of 150 grams each tire. I really hope that the weight penalty is worth it. Tannis supplied me with these inserts to feature in some videos, so thank you to them. The two inserts can be purchased for $99 or $127 if you want valves and sealant included. That's actually quite a bit less compared to say Cushcore. Speaking of Cushcore, their new Bead Bro tool makes installing these inserts seriously easy. I also use Cushcore's beefy tire lever to help install the tires with the inserts. Oh no, so the wheels is just blowing air straight out the valve hole. These wheels came pre-taped from Hunt's, but I have to say, whoever taped them did an awful job. The tape that was installed was really loose and it caused air to escape from the valve holes. I don't know about you, but I really hate dealing with rim tape. Unfortunately, because of this, I have to start from scratch. Off camera, I went ahead and added a couple extra layers of rim tape. Hopefully that fixes it. Let's try this again. Now the first wheel is holding air, we can move on to the next. Time to rid this bike of its old wheel set. I need to move over the rotors and the cassette from the stock wheel set and move them over to the new wheels. Since these new wheels are center lock, I'll actually have to use adapters from Hunt to install my 6-bolt rotors. All right, so the old wheel set weighed in at 4,888 grams. That includes tires, tubes, cassette, rotors, everything. The new wheel set comes in at 4,414 grams. That includes 300 grams of tire inserts. And even with the inserts, we saved 474 grams. That's a little more than 1 pound in weight savings. And that's actually really important because rotational weight matters a lot more than just unsprung weight. All right, now that the new tires are installed, we can check out the total weight of this bike. When we first started this whole series, the bike weighed in at 33 pounds. Now, the bike comes in at 28 pounds. That's 5 pounds less than when we started. Can you ever imagine we would have gotten this $400 Dick's Hardtail down to 28 pounds? Right away, I felt like I had way more traction climbing, and even better is that I wasn't deflecting off each rock. I actually put in my best time yet of 3 minutes and 35 seconds. That's a full 8 seconds faster than my previous best time and 32 seconds faster than the stock time. Moving on to the second climb, the new wheel set once again proves its worth by setting a time of 6 minutes and 13 seconds. I finally beat the stock time of 6 minutes and 45 seconds. It only took to the last episode to do it. Moving on to the first downhill, I set a time of 1 minute and 32 seconds, which is 8 seconds faster than the previous best and way faster than the stock time of 2 minutes and 16. The ride felt incredibly smoother, and I actually forgot I was on a hardtail. The fast and flowy section also sees an improved time of 1 minute and 18, beating our previous best of 1:20 and the stock time of 1 minute 40 seconds. Hands down, these upgrades to this bike made the biggest change yet. Judging by how I blew away all my previous best times for every segment, I think it's safe to say that this was money well spent. The Tannis armor did an amazing job allowing me to run much lower tire pressures than I previously had. With the old setup that included tubes, I was running 24 PSI front and 26 rear. With the Tannis inserts, I was able to run 17 in the front and 19 in the rear. With the lower tire pressure came better grip and a crazy smooth ride. Just how far has this bike come? Let me put something into perspective. On the full Randall Henderson downhill, today's run came in at 3 minutes 26 seconds, which is only 2 seconds slower than my previous best ever time, ever. And that's even on my intense primer. And that's really saying something because that's a $7,000 bike. The first upgrade to this bike was the Bucklos Lutu Air Fork. It really changed the ride significantly and gave us back a working front suspension. However, if you're serious about mountain biking, I really can't recommend it. I punished this fork during this series and now it's actually really starting to creak. I think this fork is good for someone who is just going to do very light cross-country riding and just wants an air fork versus a heavy coil fork. The second upgrade to this bike was a pair of Shimano MT500 hydraulic disc brakes. I totally can recommend this upgrade for anybody who's still rocking mechanical disc brakes. The difference between the two really was night and day. You can spend a little bit more and get a nice set of Dior or even SLX brakes that are going to have some better features. Next up, I replaced all the contact points, and this is where the GT Laguna Pro really started to look like a proper mountain bike. The new wider bars and short stem was the real standout, and while the dropper post was the close second, the grips and pedals made for a all-around better ride. The Box 3 Prime 9 drivetrain, along with the Gnopper cranks, brought this bike into a modern drivetrain. Its wide range cassette paired with the 32 tooth chainring up front gave me all the range I needed in a much simpler drivetrain versus the old 3x system that was there previously. In total, I spent around $1,400 in upgrades on this bike, not including the $290 worth of parts that were supplied by Tag Metals and Tannis Armor. Thank you to them. You can also help support the channel by picking up merch, joining Patreon, and using that thanks button down below. Overall, this series was incredibly fun to make. Let me know what you think should be next.